Mad about it. Yeah. So we went out Mother's Day and we had 3 generations on the boat. So we had one
Will be able to stay for a drink or something afterwards? Yeah, it's just an open bar, so you just get what you want. You need getting something up, just holler or just email your nephews.
Are you saying some words?
So you going out the boat this morning?
Oh, I had to take it for a test run.
Survey.
Nah, touched the bottom coming in up the top.
What is it?
So I was worried that I had a bend in the front, so I had to make sure it was alright.
Alright?
Yeah, no, that's really nice.
Hello everybody. Hello everybody. Hello everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this service to honour and celebrate the life of Dennis Roy Barrowclough. I want to start the service with a poem. Not how did he die, but how did he live? Not what did he gain, but what did he give? These are the units to measure the worth of a man as a man, regardless of birth. Not what was his church or what was his creed, but had he befriended those really in need. Not what was his station, but had he a heart? How did he play in his God-given part? Was he ever ready with words of good cheer, to bring back a smile, to banish a tear? Not how did the formal obituary run, but how many grieved when his life work was done. Thank you all for coming here today to remember Dennis. Your presence here signifies that Dennis shared a lot of love. Thank you to everybody who are watching the live stream of this service. We know you would have been here if your circumstances had been different. On behalf of my brother Peter and my sisters Shirley and Tony and our families, we want to express our gratitude that every one of you has played a part in enriching Dad's life, Dennis's life. And for that, we want to thank you. We want to acknowledge Dennis's late wife, Coral, our mother, our brother and sister, Ken and Colleen, and Dennis's special friend, Judith, who are no longer with us. My name is Sue. I'm one of Dennis's children, but I reckon I was the favourite. Dennis lived a good life. He lived 96 years, and we are grateful to have had him in our lives. We want to thank the staff at Moana House who cared for Dennis and made his last 5 years comfortable and happy. You are very special people. You made a difference for him by allowing him to be himself and respecting him for who he was. Thank you. Dennis had many loves. He loved his entire family. He guided and supported all of us. We knew he always had our backs. Dennis loved fishing. Fishing was his passion, and it's a gimme that he loved fishing more than he loved farming. As a child, I can remember Dad making time to slink off fishing with Harry Williams, his best mate. Dennis and Harry had so much fun together and laughter, and Dennis missed him terribly when he died suddenly many years ago. Even into his 90s, Dennis would remember Harry fondly, and he would laugh and tell stories of the two of them together. Dennis loved Whangamata. When they retired at age 60, Coral and Dennis sold the farm and built a home here in Whangamata. I want to thank the community of Whangamata for being just that, a wonderful community. Both Coral and Dennis were very happy here. Dennis loved the harbour here at Whangamata. In his mind, there was no better harbour in the country. When he purchased the Valencia, he had a wonderful time fishing and having a celebratory drink with his mates. You guys know who you are. And although some of these wonderful men are no longer alive, the memories of them lived with Dennis, and we would often talk about the good times. I would like to invite my brother Peter to give Dennis's eulogy.
Thank you, Sue. So I'm Peter Barrowclough, and I'm Dennis's son. Dennis was born in 1927 in Morrinsville, the third son of Jesse and Miles Barrowclough. They lived on a dairy farm at Mangataparu near Morrinsville. Dad's older brothers were Charles and Jim. Times were tough, and Dad talked a lot about the poverty all around at that time. They didn't have a radio until 1939. Dad did his primary schooling at Mangataparu, and in 1940 and 41 he did his secondary schooling at New Plymouth Boys High, where he was a boarder. He left school at 14 to go home to run the family farm because his father Miles, a World War I veteran, went to train the Home Guard at the start of World War II to defend New Zealand against a potential Japanese invasion. Dad's brother Jim was training to be a pilot, and Charles was an electrical engineer and was involved in early radar installations. So it was left to Dad at 14 to help his mother run the farm. Near the end of the war, Dad reached 18 and enrolled in basic training in the army, but then the war ended. Sometime after the war, Dad went to work in Auckland at a wool store. This was his only job outside of farming. He then spent some time sharemarking for his father, and then he bought the farm at Tauhei with Miles and Jim as a runoff. It was a difficult farm. The soil was locally known as Tauhei Pug, and there were 60 acres of peat which was full of timber. It was wet in the winter and it was dry in the summer. It was also covered in granite boulders, and Dad and Jim used to dig them out with a crowbar and timber jacks and blow them up with dynamite so they were small enough to put on an inch thick piece of steel that could be towed behind the tractor so they could dump them in the gully and the fields could be cultivated. There was just 6 acres of grass of the 150 acres when he first bought it. The rest of it was covered in manuka and scrub. He built a cowshed and a batch on the farm and moved there to live in it full time. There were great neighbours, John and Marge Meikle, and Arthur and Florrie Palmer, and John and Marge's son is here today. Dad eventually bought out his dad and then Jim, and he owned the farm outright. As he cleared more, he sowed more grass, he bought more cows, and production crept up. Then Dad met my mum Coral at an Anzac Day service in Morrinsville. Mum had 4 children from a previous marriage. They were Ken, Shirley, Colleen and Tony, and had separated from her husband and had gone to live with her father, William McPherson, in Morrinsville. He was a manager at the dairy factory. Dad and Mum started courting. The Greenfield kids would hitch a ride on the truck that picked up the cream cans from all the gates and regularly stopping at Dad's farm to pick up the cream, and Dad would occasionally send presents for the children back with the cream truck driver. Courting was going well and plans to get married advanced. He built a brand new 3-bedroom brick house on the farm for the impending arrival of his instant family. Coral and Dennis got married in 1958 and the instant family moved in. The Greenfield children had a reputation for being highly spirited.
What are you looking at me for?
They all had their jobs to do on the farm, and Coral worked on the farm as well, milking the cows. Punishment for the children for any wrongdoing was to go to the shed and scrub the pipework clean, so it was one of the cleanest sheds in the district, or grub the thistles, or grub the ragwort. Dad was a worrier, and around 1962 he got very ill and spent 6 weeks in hospital. The Greenfield kids had to run the farm while Dad was in hospital, and he credits them for saving the family farm. Sue arrived in 1959 and I arrived in 1962. So for a brief period of time, the family of 8 were all squashed into the 3-bedroom house. The older Greenfield children started getting jobs and leaving home, and eventually it was Sue and I at home, and I can remember having to get ourselves ready for school because Mum was in the shed, of course. There was a homemade telephone line between the cow shed and the house. Mum would crank the handle at the shed to ring the bells in the house until either Sue or I got out of bed to answer it to make sure we get to school in time. Growing up on the farm was great. We didn't have a lot of money, but there was plenty to do and lots of fresh air and space. Dad was a bit of a MacGyver, and 2 stories come to mind. Dad used to smoke in the old days, and he's told me of getting down the back of the farm and not having any matches. So he would dip the cigarette paper in the petrol tank of the tractor, undo a spark plug, and then turn the tractor over and light the cigarette paper with a spark plug. I also remember being back down the back of the farm and it started to rain and not having a raincoat. So he got out his pocket knife, which he always carried with him, and cut me a raincoat out of a fertiliser bag so I could stay dry. The closest town to Tauhei was Morrinsville, and Dad would go to town on a Friday, and shopping for supplies would be followed by a couple of whiskies at the Farmer's Bar at the Nottingham Castle Hotel. I have not so fond memories of Sue and I waiting in the car with a bag of chips and a bottle of Coke each, while waiting for Dad and Mum to have their social interaction at the Knot. As Sue's mentioned, Dad's best mate was Harry Williams, and they loved to go fishing together. Their first boat was a clinker-built wooden boat with a seagull motor. And unfortunately, Harry died quite young from a heart attack. But we are still very connected to the Williams family, and Harry's daughters, Christine and Lynette, are here today. Dad had many friends at Tauhei, families like the Meekles, the Williams, the Blakes, the Corleys, the Rowlings, the Bowmans, and many others. And some of those families are represented here again today, so thank you for coming. There were district functions, and Dad took a spell at being the Hall Committee Chair. He was also very involved in Federated Farmers, representing the Waikato district in meetings in Wellington. He was presented a Distinguished Service Award for 30 years of service to the Federated Farmers. Dad worked very hard on the farm, sometimes too hard, and his doctor told him he had to have 2 weeks holiday a year. So early holidays were at Waihi Beach, and then from when I was the age of 1, here at Whangamata. Mum got a small inheritance, and they purchased the batch off the Blakes at Mary Road, where the family home is still today. Dad wanted to stop milking cows and took a serious look at kiwi fruit farm on number 3 Road, Te Puke. Imagine what that would be worth now, but he never took the plunge, and instead he built a second house on the farm and put a share milker in it, and Brian King is here today with that first share milker. To help pay for things, we went out and contract hay baling. Finally, it became time to retire, and Dad wanted to buy a house in Morrinsville and retire there. And Mum said, "I'll miss you because I'm going to Whangamata." So Coral's common sense prevailed, and they built the current house on the section at Mary Road and moved to live there. Dad had money in the share market, and he took it all out to build the house several months before the 1987 share market crash, so he was a canny lucky man. They kept the farm for a few more years and eventually sold it, and they had a wonderful retirement here at Whangamata. Dad joined the Coast Guard, and I think he was president at one point. Dad had upgraded his boat a few times since the first one he owned with Harry, and once he retired he bought his dream boat, the 10-metre long Launch Valencia. It could sleep 4, and Dad had many great trips to Great Barrier, plus many day trips out of Whangamata. Mum enjoyed time to herself when he went fishing, and she wasn't much of a fisherwoman. Luckily, Dad had plenty of mates who would go out with him. Ian Wise, Hottie, who's here, Guy Bowman, and others. Eventually, my late brother Ken bought a place at Whangamata, as did my sister Sue and her husband Kevin. And there were many, many parties in the garage at Mary Road, and the extended family have wonderful memories of time spent there. Unfortunately, Mum had a stroke in 2005 and passed away within 12 months. Dad was now on his own. He joined the community church, and there he met Judith Fenn, who provided companionship in his later years. He managed for a long time living alone, only though with the unwavering support of the Blakes and next door, and Sue and Kevin, who were living there at the time. He sought friendship at the Ocean Sports Club, where we are here today. He spent most of his days here from 4 p.m, and he was often referred to as Whangamata's oldest teenager. In 2011, Dad had a boating accident. The engine blew up, setting the boat on fire. Dad and Guy Bowman were forced to jump overboard with the fire preventing them getting to the life jackets. Dad had burns down his back, and his jaw was broken in 3 places. They hung on to the anchor rope until it burnt through. Fortunately, another boat was close by, and they were rescued, and Dad was choppered to Waikato Hospital. The day before, Dad had donated $1,000 to the Waikato Respect Helicopter Trust. I think it knocked him a lot. He aged 10 years because of the accident, and life after losing the boat was hard, and dementia started to creep in. In 2017, aged 90, he went to full-time residential care at Moana House. They did a wonderful job looking after Dad. The family is eternally grateful. He had many visits from friends and family over the 6 years he was cared for there. He passed away on the 6th of May, the day of the King's coronation, and my sister Shirley was with him, and he passed away very, very peacefully. So Dad, what were your characteristics? Well, he wasn't much of a sports person, but he did like shooting, and he won some cups in his early youth. He was a good farmer. It was a tough piece of dirt, but through hard work and his good understanding of agriculture and animals, he made it work. He was hard working. As I've said, he often worked himself to a standstill. He was tough. He survived a ruptured appendix, rolling a tractor before safety frames were invented, bowel cancer, stomach ulcers, and a boat explosion. and he got COVID twice at the rest home. As mentioned, he could fix most everything, and he taught me a lot of my mechanical skills. He was honest, and he could always be trusted. He was community minded and serving on the Hall Committee, Federated Farm, Coast Guard, and as the church treasurer. He had a sense of duty that came from his family, which had a strong military history. He was intensely interested in politics and was a card-carrying member of the National Party. He was always late, and it drove us crazy. He loved playing chess, and he still played it at Moana House. Dad was good with his finances and made good money on his shares. He was generous, helping various family members out financially and donating to many causes and some folk here in Whangamata. He loved his whiskey, his fishing and his mates, and he loved his family. Thank you, Dad. You taught me a lot. I've inherited some of your good characteristics and probably some of the not so good ones. I've told you that Dad's farm was tough. Well, the only thing tougher than that farm was you, Dad, that farmer. You took on a farm, you brought up 6 kids, along with Coral, you built a family, and a farm that gave us all a living. You have 4 surviving children, 10 grandchildren, and 11 great-grandchildren, so the family legacy carries on. You will be missed, but never forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Dad remains a member of our family and extended family through the influence he's had on all of us, and the special part he has played in our lives. I now invite my sister Shirley and her daughter Cheryl to speak about their memories of Dad, Dennis.
Because my brother, bless his little heart, informed me I'm the oldest one of the family. How did that come about? Anyhow, I'm just speaking about the years with Dennis. There were 4 of us, ages ranging from 9 to 4, when we left Wellington with Mum to arrive in Morrinsville to live with our grandfather, Pop Mac. I think I was about 9 when I first met Dad. He had come to our door, knocked, and I opened the door to see this man standing there with a bunch of flowers, asking to see Mum. I actually shut the door in his face and ran to Mum and saying, Mum, there's a man at the door to see you. And I think that was our introduction to Dennis. I don't think he had much to do with children up to that point, and I take my hat off to him for sticking around. As Peter said, we could be a bit of a handful at times, but I reckon he thought Mum was worth it, and we did too. Having been a bachelor farmer for a long time, when they married in 1958, we all moved out to his farm in Tauhei to a brand new brick house. A little different to the batch he had been living in, I might add. There used to be newspapers all over the table, tomato sauce bottles, plates that hadn't been washed. Typical bachelor father. I guess it would be fair to say that was the beginning of our family dynamics of being and living as a unit and the start of our education of each other. After all, going from one to a family of 6 in a day, that would be a big step for anyone. It certainly was a lot of fun and learning. Dad always said he learned a lot from us kids, and we learned a lot from him. We all had our chores and we settled down to life on the farm. Of course, Dad loved his fishing, and as kids we would take turns at going out with him, some more than others. As it was a bit of a game with us, we had a thing going that the last one to do this had to go out fishing. And sometimes he would be out there for hours. Not much fun if you weren't a good sailor, but we all survived. The things we do for families, eh? We did become a blended family when Sue and Peter arrived, and of course around that time some of us older kids had started to leave home for work. Dad, you were always there for us all and helped us when needed. Always fair and never any favourites, and we thank you for that. He still had a sense of humour, and we had some laughs when we visited him at Moana House. It was only a couple of months ago that he said to me, I think it's time I took a trip to the barrier. And I said, looked at him and said, and how are you going to do that, Dad? He said, in my boat. I said, well, that'd be a bit of a shame because your boat's at the bottom of the ocean. And he just smiled and looked at me and said, oh. Well, Dad, I could go on, but I guess other people have a few words. I know you didn't think you would outlive two of your children, but on behalf of Ken and Colin, thank you. And the four of us still here, thank you for being you. Thank you for being a great granddad to your grandchildren, and staff at Moana House, thank you very, very much. Also the girls that looked after Dad before he went to Moana House. My memory's gone, I can't really remember except Karen, I think it was Karen and Deb's. And thank you for all your help with Cheryl, my lovely daughter, in the early years. You and Mum were the best. Okay. Now I'm going to read a poem. Come to me. God saw you. Is that too low? No, okay. God saw you getting tired, and a cure was not to be. So he put his arms around you and whispered, come to me. With tearful eyes we watched you and saw you pass away. And although we loved you dearly, we could not make you stay. A golden heart stopped beating, hard-working hands at rest. God broke our hearts to prove us he only takes the best. And I'll let it into a little secret. He may have, working hands may have come to rest, but he did give me a smack on the last day.
Sorry, my printer didn't work. Right, I guess it's on the phone. So I'm Cheryl, Shirley's daughter, one of the 10 grandchildren, and dear Granddad Dennis. Gratitude is one of the many positive emotions that you can feel. It's about focusing on what's good in our lives and being thankful for the things that we have. Gratitude is pausing to notice and appreciate. Granddad, here are only some of the things I am grateful for that I got to share with you. I'm sure my cousins have many other memories that they could add to here. The warm smile you always showed whenever we walked through the door, as well as your warm embrace. The opportunity to share the many fond memories growing up around the farm at Tauhei, from helping in the cow shed. I don't really know if we were helping, probably more of a hindrance. Helping bale the hay and playing in the hay barns, probably destroying all the hard work that they did. Detailing the lambs at the neighbours, swimming in the creeks, having a calf to care for when the annual calf club's days were approaching, finding eels in the creeks, riding the tractors and the farm bikes, and the opportunity to put on shows for family and friends where they would gather where the big concrete deck came around the house and it became our stage. When you and Nana introduced us to Whangamata, and we've honestly loved it ever since. And we have many friends here today who have shared in many whiskies with Dennis, whether it's just popping in or sharing it with him at the boat club here. He has a lot of friends. When you and Nana introduced us to Whangamata, it has just been the best thing that has happened for us. I'm grateful for the many fishing trips that I was part of, and I've transferred that enjoyment to most of my children. As a kid, you would help me pull in my fishing line when my arms were tired. Sometimes I was lucky enough to have a John Dory attached to a baby snapper to add for the extra excitement to the catch. The family boat trips to Slipper Island and other beaches along the Coromandel coastlines that were full of crystal clear waters and rocks to explore. Nana would often meet us and come down the track because she didn't want to come on the boat, but she was still made it here anyway. For helping me show what family is about, and coming together and being appreciative for any time that's spent together. Whenever you can, and whoever wants to join in is always welcome. For playing and teaching me a trick or two alongside Nana with playing 500. When I would visit him at Moana House, we moved to playing fish with Lexi, my youngest daughter, and he would kick our ass every time. The introduction to yummy Eskimo pies, The taste for a good drop of whiskey, and it didn't matter where it was always 4 o'clock somewhere in the world. I'm thankful for the times I would sit with you at Moana House, sometimes with my kids and sometimes just myself. And you would tell me of the time when, as we flicked through the photo albums that brought you so much joy, and the stories of, and your fond memories of your life story was captured in your 96 years played out. You were always so proud to speak of your 6 children and where they were and what they were doing. But mostly, I am grateful for you, as you are my granddad, and I have had the opportunity to have these experiences with you, which are now memories that I'll treasure forever, and I'll always love you. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you very much, Shirley and Cheryl. Dennis was a deep thinker, an intelligent man who learned about and embraced technology well into his later years. But also, in the 30 years or so Dennis and Coral lived at Whangamata, they had lots of fun. These were extremely happy years, full of laughter and good people and many parties. To recall some of the memories of the good times, I invite my husband, Kevin.
I have to get a bigger version. I used to use my phone, but I can't see it anymore, so bigger screen. Another 10 years it'll be up there. Right, hello. This is Dennis, take 3 for me. Hi, I'm Kevin, Dennis's son-in-law, and I completed version 1 and version 2 of this tribute about a week ago. And a lot of what I thought was funny was deemed inappropriate. But it was funny. I asked my son James about his favourite memories of Dennis, and he delighted in retelling the story of how Dennis single-handed ended the Second World War. As Dennis used to say, Hitler committed suicide on the 22nd of April, 1945. Just my 18th birthday, the day I signed up. I don't know how he heard I was coming, but there you are, here's the war. I first met Dennis Christmas 1987, Dennis and Coral's first Christmas in their new house at the beach at Whangamata. And over the next 10 years, Sue and I moved about 10 times, mostly between broken down old pubs in Auckland or Hamilton. Dennis followed our progress carefully, always concerned about the shitholes I kept taking his daughter to. But whenever he visited, he was always ready to stay an extra few days and help with the maintenance. The fence for the dog in Milford, fixing holes in the toilet walls was a favourite. The Chartwell Tavern set the record for that, it was over 20. And he would just fix whatever needed fixing. On our frequent visits to Whangamata, I would always anticipate the upcoming tasting session of Dennis's home brew, DB. You know. It wasn't a bad drop. Dennis made Cooper's Lager, and the art of good brewing is in the water supply, and having a fresh water pump at Mary Road made all the difference. I remember the slightly numbing smile you would get after the second glass. And I'd estimate it was at least 6% alcohol by volume. And although time consuming, many years and a few brain cells later went by in the pursuit of the ultimate brew. But unfortunately, the brew kit caught the brewing equivalent of COVID, and it was the end of Dennis's brewing career. Fishing trips with Dennis, his favourite was to the Barrier, and on one of his earlier Barrier trips, Dennis and his 2 crewmates were trying to get into the inflatable craft to get back from the wharf to the Valencia. And I have it from a reliable source. The main problem was that none of them seemed to be able to stand up independently. And a New Zealand naval vessel was anchored nearby, and upon observation of the situation, they dispatched a tender which took Dennis and his crew to the Valencia along with the inflatable. Then Dennis talked them into coming aboard for a whiskey, which they did, and no one left the Valencia till after 11 p.m. And he always had the packing list for the trip to the barrier, and it started with and finished with whiskey. And the clothing list, I think, was enough needed to pack the whiskey safely. Dennis's picnic trips with the family on the boat were far more gentle. Dennis always took his boatmaster responsibilities seriously, and the time for a drink was after we were all safely back in the harbour. And there were no early morning starts. We'd go after breakfast. He supplied everything: bait, rods, tackle, cold beer, fuel, coffee, food. And we were always given a time to be at the wharf for pickup, and every comfort was afforded his guests. Ian Wise would normally come along and fill at everything on the home leg, and always the catch would be equally shared amongst those on board. The marina. Dennis was an early adopter of the marina in Whangamata, and from day one was in the Marina Society, and he purchased a marina berth. And it was a long wait for Dennis to get his marina berth, and a proud moment when he was given second position in the flotilla for the opening of the marina behind Roy, who was a Commodore at the time. During the wait for the marina, he managed to get into a lot of trouble with his mate and neighbour, Russell Blake, removing the mangroves. Dennis was very proud of the remand letter he got from the TCDC and the decision not to prosecute. It's still on display in his garage. No? He did a trip to Wellington to petition Parliament about the lack of progress at the marina. I don't know what happened in Wellington, but that is how the promise of a stripper for his 90th came to be. The promise makers never thought Dennis would make 90, because at that time he was only 80. But he held on. Post-Valencia, it was a dark time for Dennis. He really missed the boat, and he would walk into town daily and pick up his lunch: a bacon and egg sandwich, a savoury and a sausage roll, ×2 for visitors. We would often sit and have lunch outside the house watching the cowries grow. And he would say, "Sometimes I sit and think, sometimes I just sit." But he outlived one of the kauri trees. And I always remember Dennis's bumper sticker on his ute when we were first in Whangamata: "Live long enough to be a problem to your children." Right. He maintained his independence, and he guarded his independence in his later years, and he developed a saying: "Is that right?" To any suggestion that his well-being or safety was compromised, or that his house required maintenance. Well, he never lived long enough to be a problem to you. Sorry. Never lived long enough to be a problem to your children, Dennis, but you certainly provided a few challenges. We'll enjoy the memories.
Dennis was a good man, an honest man. He believed in the good within human beings. He nourished friendships. I invite Tracy Blake to speak on behalf of Dawn and her family about Dennis's friendship.
Good afternoon. I'm honoured to say a few words about Dennis on behalf of the Blakes. The Barrowcloughs and the Blakes. Well, it's 50 years of farming, fishing, festivities, and most of all, friendship. The friendship started 50 years ago whilst Dennis and Coral and Mum and Dad farmed in Tauhei. It continued to Whangamata when Dennis and Coral bought the batch at 213 from Mum and Dad, who also bought the section next door at 211 as a campsite for caravans, tents. It had an ablution shed, and it had been nicknamed the Blake's Nambassa. In the days of no fences, Dennis hung a bell on the kawhai tree to be rung on crossing the threshold, as he did not want to, and I quote, "come knocking if the caravan was rocking." But there started the tradition of ringing the bell for the fivesies. Eventually, the houses here today were built and festivities moved into the warmer garages, where altogether we celebrated birthdays, Christmases, marriages, christenings, a divorce or two, and ultimately we came together to commiserate and celebrate the passing of family. Dennis and Dad shared a love of fishing, and together they spent time on Valencia, where both Dennis and Ian Wise shared their spot X's with Dad. I've seen photos of the boys' trips, and it's probably a lot more than a lady like myself should see. They had many trips together to the Mercs and Barrier, and when Mum and Dad purchased Cavalier, they would travel in tandem to Barrier for their annual trip. Dennis was what you would call in the old days a man's man. And although Mum was not one of the boys, on these trips she was treated as such, and which from Dennis shows his respect for her. When Dennis was president of the Whangamata Coast Guard, he encouraged, and I'll insert here, coerced Mum and Dad to start up one of the first home bases of the Coast Guard radio operations. Dennis had 5 jokes he would tell on rotation. They were definitely not repeatable in a crowded room, but I am happy to share 1 or 2 of them later with you with a whiskey. What started as friendship these 50 years have now merged to family, with both myself and my children calling Dennis Grandpa B. B is not just for Barrowclough. B is for second grandfather. So Grandpa B, here's to you, your socially unacceptable jokes, your jug of whiskey with a sniff of water, and may your faith have led you to a heaven where you will ever keep a tight line.
Thank you, Tracy, that was beautiful. Another good friend, Glyn Thomas, and his wife Jenny have written a tribute to Dennis. I don't think Glyn's here, so I'm going to read it on behalf of Glyn. Our first contact was when Jenny gave adult piano organ lessons to Coral before we met Dennis. Dennis himself joined our congregation after he lost Coral. He became a valued member. His main contributions were in greeting people at the door, taking up the offering, and assisting with the treasurership. Glyn was one of many to enjoy fishing trips on Dennis's boat. Dennis would divide the catch afterwards evenly between himself and his passengers, even though it was his tackle, his boat, his bait, and his booze. In retirement, one of Dennis's hobbies was to play the stock market. We can't know how many folk Dennis helped quietly and financially in Whangamata and elsewhere, maybe from his stock market successes. We do know that Dennis was immensely proud of his uncle Harold Barrowclough. That uncle was the colonel that led the New Zealand force to liberate Le Coinay in France in World War I. He was a brigadier with New Zealand forces up through Italy and in the Pacific in World War II. I think I got that one wrong. It was World War II when he liberated Le Coinay. He was knighted by the Queen and retired eventually as Lieutenant General Sir Harold Barrowclough, New Zealand's Chief Justice. We are grateful to have had Dennis in our lives. Jenny and Glyn Thomas, Whangamata. Let us now take a moment of quiet reflection. Thank you, Rich.
again. Don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the blue skies drive the dark clouds far away. So will you please say hello to the folks that I know? Tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the blue skies hide the dark clouds far away. So will you please say hello to the folks that I know? Tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day.
Yep.
There's always one, eh? Dennis was also a spiritual man, a man who believed in God, a man who followed the Christian values of friendship and kindness. I invite Annabelle, one of Dennis's grandchildren, to read the 23rd Psalm, "The Lord is my shepherd." This psalm meant a great deal to Dennis over the years of his life.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Thank you, Annabelle. And Jesus said to his followers, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. In my Father's house there are many mansions. I will go and prepare a place for you." Dennis has set out on his last voyage. There's an old superstition that a person of the sea's soul enters a seabird on his demise. This is a lovely thought. Then Dennis would experience the freedom of flight and freedom from the responsibilities of life and just enjoy the sea, the sunrise and the sunset. Dad, your work on this earth is done. Although we are very sad that you are no longer with us, we are grateful for the many years you were alive. Dad, you are so dearly loved. You remain in our hearts and in our minds, and we'll carry you with us as we move forward with our lives. Everything you have done is still done. Everyone you have loved is still loved. Everything we have learnt from you is still learnt. And so, we will let you pass from this world for which you did so much. By your example, we are left with the strength and the pride to do what is right and good. Your memory will guide us, just as you did when you were at our side. Thank you for your love, and for our memories. You will always be missed and never forgotten. For this we are grateful, and we say goodbye. May you all find comfort and richness and example in your many memories of a life well. Start again. May you all find comfort, richness and example in your many memories of Dennis's life well lived. May you all find strength and support in your love for one another, and may you find peace in your hearts. Our family now invites you to participate in some refreshments, either at the bar or in the restaurant, and we thank you all once again for being here.